Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wench Bench, where friends sit and talk about fabulous fictional females and how their stories have influenced us throughout our lives. My name is Alison.
And my name is Fonda.
And today, Fonda is talking about General Amaya from
the Dragon Prince series.
From the Dragon Prince series, and that's on Netflix, right?
Yes. I'm going to do a world overview, no spoilers, because I think people should watch the series. It only has 3 seasons, but it's by a lot of the same cast and writers that did Avatar: The Last Airbender and Avatar: Legend of Korra.
Ooh. Yeah, it's definitely been on my list for a while, but just haven't quite gotten around to it yet.
I like it a lot. It took me a bit to get used to the animation style, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Just because it's like 3D rendered, and sometimes the movements seem a little choppy or too quick.
Okay. But
I got used to it, and it kind of adds to the enjoyment of the series a little bit.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I'm going to start by explaining the setting for the world. The series is set in a fantasy world on the continent of Zadia, which is rich in magic derived from 6 primal elements, like the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the sky, and the ocean. Centuries ago, as the story kind of starts out when you watch the very first episode, we know that dragons, elves, and humans of Zadia lived in peace. However, the humans, being unable to actually utilize magic naturally like the rest of the people and creatures and beings that live on Zadia, began to use what's known as dark magic, which is fueled by the life essence of magical creatures. As a consequence of this, they were driven away to the west part of Zadia, and the continent was split in 2 by a massive river of lava, which becomes known as the border.
Oh, dang.
Then, 1,000 years later, the human king Harrow of Katalis and his advisor, the dark mage Viren, have killed the dragon king.
Oh.
Yes. And supposedly they destroyed his egg, so like the heir. In retaliation to this, elf assassins attempt to kill the King Harrow and his son, Ezran. Ezran and his half-brother Callum and a young elf assassin called Rayla discover that the egg was not actually destroyed.
Oh, yay!
And they decide to undertake a dangerous mission to return the egg to Zadia. Viren, however, seizes power after Harrow's assassination and sends his children, Claudia and Soren, to kill the princes and recover the egg. So that's kind of like, you figure that out in the first 2 episodes, so I'm not really going to count that as a spoiler because it happens so quickly.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like the past history that we know of, because I actually believe they might be trying to make more series set within the world of Zadia, so we're probably going to get more information in future years with different series or comic books, but that's like the basic information of the world and where the current story is set.
Cool. So lots of like political upheaval, assassinations, magic. Sounds fun.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I like some of the stuff that they tackle in the show. For example, Claudia, Viren's daughter, she's learning to use dark magic as well, and she's so fun and quirky. So it's weird when she uses this dark magic power, and she kind of changes as the series goes because she will do anything for her family, which can be really shitty.
Yeah, so Viren was one of the sons of Harrow?
No, Viren is the mage advisor to the king.
Okay.
Yeah. The sons of the King Harrow are Ezran and Callum.
Okay.
And Callum is the half-brother.
Half-brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So before I want to talk about why I like Amaya and dive into some other interesting things I found while doing research for her, I just want to talk about like basic information on the character herself.
Cool.
Amaya is the younger sister of the late Queen Sarai. She died, unfortunately. and she's the maternal aunt of Callum and Ezrin. She is deaf and communicates through sign language.
That's cool.
Yeah. Her close friend and trusted lieutenant is named Gren, and he's like the primary sign language interpreter until they split up and aren't always with each other, and then sometimes she doesn't have an interpreter and whatnot. But when the series first starts out and we meet her, they're like always together. She is the general and the leader of what's called the Standing Battalion, one of Catalis's most powerful armies. And they're keeping vigilant guard at the border. So, reminder, the border is covered with the river of lava, protecting the human side of Zadia with, like, the elf dragon magical side.
Yeah.
Amaya is seen as a very warm and caring and strong woman who deeply cares about her family and is willing to fight to protect them. She's also incredibly loyal to her late older sister, Sarai, the queen who passed, as she becomes a mother-like figure to Callum and Ezrin in Sarai's place.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, she's often shown as placing their safety and well-being above all else. She is also an iron-fisted commander with, sadly, a deep hatred for Zadia, like the elves and the dragons. And the reason this is because the Dragon King killed Sarai.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's often in battle. She adopts like a confident and intimidating nature, an attribute which is best demonstrated in her fight with Rayla, the young moon elf assassin. And though this continues, she ends up putting aside her hatred when she remembers that Viren is actually the true villain. Mm-hmm. So she ends up fighting for Zadia and befriending Janai, which is this really badass Sunfire elf, who previously was actually her enemy at the border. They were constantly fighting. But they befriended each other and they decided to fight for Zadia and protecting like everybody, not just like fighting for humans. She also has a huge sense of humility when admitting her own mistakes. Similar to like Callum and Ezrin in the show, they are often very humble and are able to admit when they're wrong and when they do things that they thought were right at the time but realized were a mistake. Mm-hmm. She also obviously ends up changing her opinions about the elves because she over time saw like their true colors, their true intentions, their actions, and their kindness.
Yeah. So they were more than just a faceless enemy.
Yeah. She actually like got to know them as the series went on. She also has a really good intuition because she suspected Viren's betrayal of the kingdom would actually happen someday. Like she always suspected he was never going to be the good ally for long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't trust those head mages. They, in fantasy settings, they just never are the good guy.
No, especially when they're dealing with magic that's not natural.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something else that's really, I would say a general information about her because it's just an example of her character trait. Has like a huge, like she's pure of heart. She's strong, has strong conviction, which is shown when she is facing something called the Light of the Sunforge, which is for the Sunfire elves. Normally it's a big challenge and it can like really hurt people if you're not pure of heart, and she came out of it undamaged, unharmed. And then later the statement of her being pure of heart and strong with her convictions was supported when she was allowed to ride on the back of what's called a twin-tailed inferno-toothed tiger.
Jesus.
Long name.
That sounds ridiculous and awesome.
It's a badass creature. It's really cool. But it's a creature that only allows people with pure hearts to ride on their back.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I know. I'm like magical creatures that tell you that this person's a good person.
Like unicorns.
Like unicorns. Oh. Okay, so without trying to repeat some of the stuff I just said, I want to talk about and explain exactly why I like her and what I think makes her so wonderful as a character.
Yeah.
When first getting introduced to General Amaya, I was immediately taken by her because of her physical presence that she emits on screen as a character with obviously no voice. Mm-hmm. The team for the Dragon Prince had to, and this is in my opinion, think really hard about how to frame the scenes with Amaya in them. Not only how we see her interacting with the world, but how the world interacts with her as well. Because again, she is deaf, and her facial expressions and actions are a huge part of how she communicates to those that cannot read or interpret sign language.
Yeah.
I just really loved watching her on screen, how she did combat, how she showed tenderness to her nephews, how she inspired leadership to those under her, and also like how her humor played across as well, because obviously if she didn't have someone interpreting her, and if she knows someone might not understand sign language, she has to figure out other ways to get across to multiple people, especially being a general.
Yeah.
And so it's something I always found really enjoyable was watching her be on screen. Obviously, something I found was that with other characters, while I'm watching the show, I can look away, I can do other stuff without focusing because they would have a voice that I could listen to figure out what was happening or going to happen. But when Amaya is on screen, those scenes were the ones where I found I had to show and provide my full attention.
Yeah.
And that's just because I knew I needed to see, like physically see how she acted, see what she did to figure out scenes with her in them, especially when she didn't have Gren or another translator with her. I found that I was just always more focused because I knew her words in those scenes where there was no translator. Those scenes weren't necessarily for me.
Yeah.
Because I can't read sign language and I can't interpret it. Mm-hmm. So I had to really rely on her actions and facial expressions to give me insight to what she was feeling or thinking. And I guess because of that, I just became more connected with her when she was on screen.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always nice to see that kind of representation in a show too, where like it shows like the difficulties that character has to go through, but also I enjoy it when it kind of reminds me of when in some movies they don't put subtitles on under somebody speaking another language.
Yeah.
Because you as the viewer are following a person who doesn't understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
So it adds to the experience to kind of bring you in, which sounds like they did really effectively by not necessarily always translating for her. It did bring you more into the experience of what you would be having to deal with had this been a real person that you were interacting with.
Yeah.
Which is neat.
Yeah, exactly. I felt like even though I can't understand her on the level where she can't communicate with her voice, like I don't know what that's like. I'm very thankful I can. I still felt connected with her on a sort of like physical level, I guess I'm gonna say. Like, because I was so intent on watching her, needing to understand the scenes with her in them, because I couldn't rely on her words to tell me things, I felt more connected with her through, like the old saying, actions speak louder than words. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Besides that, Alison, some not so deep reasons on why I like her are that she's a total badass. Like, her fighting style is super cool, and her weapon of choice, I think, really speaks to her protective and caring nature, because she has, like, a short sword, but she mainly fights with this giant freaking shield that's, like, pointy on certain ends. I think it just goes to show that she has chosen a badass shield that suits her fighting style because she wants to protect things. Mm-hmm. She doesn't always want to hack and slash. So she's so cool when she fights. Lastly, I really, really, really like her relationships in the show, which I won't get into a lot because personally I feel like I would need to rewatch the entire series over and over again just to break down the scenes more. Yeah. But each of her meaningful relationships, both good and bad, are really interesting to me, and they show more sides of her as a character, like how she interacts with Viren, which is really complicated because though Viren is like the bad guy, you can tell he does care about the humans, and that's why he does the things he's doing. Mm-hmm. But Amaya thinks he's doing it wrong. So I just find that interesting. And then obviously her relationships with her nephews and her starting relationship with elves and how it changes. Like she's really cool. She's so cool.
Yeah, like sounds like a lot of like character growth in regards to relationships, which is something I really enjoy when TV shows explore that, how the core character doesn't necessarily change, but their views and the way that they interact with the people around them can kind of shift and change depending on the situation and the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something that I really wanted to get into after explaining like basic information of her and reasons why I like her is like how the show handled Amaya's deafness. Mm-hmm. While I was rewatching specific scenes from the show that had Amaya in them, I decided that I also wanted to do research into Amaya's deafness, specifically how it was handled.
Yeah.
And how those who are HOH, which is short for hard of hearing, perceived her.
Cool.
So I found a specific article that came to my attention as doing research. It's titled, How the Dragon Prince Carefully Handled General Amaya's Deafness. Mm-hmm. The show's writers explain how the fan favorite character came to be. It was written by Alex Barash. Couldn't find an audio clip of how to say this writer's last name, so I'm very sorry. But it was published on September 18th, 2018 on Polygon's website. So I'm going to be paraphrasing the article by Alex and quoting when I think is applicable, but the article is really, really good. So we're going to have a link to it in the episode description for others to read and check out because it puts into words what I would like to say and what I'm thinking much better than I ever could.
Yeah.
And there's also interview notes from them talking to the writers and the cast and the crew. So I think that adds a lot to it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
To start, Amaya's deafness is incredibly important to who she is and how she interacts with the world that is Zadia. Mm-hmm. Because obviously she signs back and forth with Callum and he's able to understand and talk to her. And in most scenes, as stated earlier, her friend and faithful Commander Gren, who is more than not the one interpreting her when they're together. Now, while it's an integral part to who she is, it's obviously not her defining trait. Because, as stated earlier, Amaya is pure of heart, deeply cares for her family, and a very fierce fighter.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, a lot of times you get characters who do have a disability where that is all that it's about, and it's a little unfortunate. To not explore the multifaceted personalities of a person.
Yeah. And I think it just goes to show that they also, because again, this is the people that created Avatar: The Last Airbender and Avatar: Legend of Korra, like Toph, one of the most badass female characters in the series, is blind.
Yeah.
And they tackled, in my opinion, her as a character really, really well.
Yeah. She's a badass. I'm sure we've mentioned her before. She's so badass.
And she's only, like, what, 12?
Yeah, she's...
At the start of the, like...
She's so young. Oh, my
God. She's so young and so badass and so complex.
Yeah, didn't they have another... Was it Legend of Korra, where they had a waterbender that didn't have arms?
Yeah, no arms.
Yeah.
No arms.
Yeah. So clearly it's important to them to show... To just have representation and show how capable the human spirit is, I guess, is how I always see it, is that, humans adapt to whatever it is that we are given and we find a way to exist in equality with everybody around us when given the tools to do so. And that's awesome.
Yeah, I also appreciate the fact that they... In my opinion, as a viewer, I'm obviously not on the team and I don't know what it's like for other people, but it appears that they really care about what they're trying to put on screen. Mm-hmm. And they might not get everything right, but also not everybody has the same experience or same story to share. Like, for example, they could have two people who are deaf on the show.
Yeah. How
one person interacts with the world and is interacted with is going to be different than the other person, and like their story and their experiences.
Yeah.
So I just appreciate that they are going to do their best to work really hard. And for the next thing I want to say is, like, to show how hard they're working is they decided to put in a lot of time talking to and working with members of the deaf and HOH community.
Oh, nice.
Apparently, it's something that they've spent a lot of time with. They also had a lot of help from ASL interpreters.
Oh, neat.
They would often send scenes of Amaya when she was in them, and they would ask them to give them feedback on whether or not her signing is coming across as authentic, and if it's coming across in a way that matches the rest of her body language. Mm-hmm. So, like, it's not that they just did it before they filmed everything, when they're like, oh, let's do tons of research now, and then we'll just make the show.
Yeah.
Like, throughout the show, they were asking the community to provide them feedback before they actually published.
Yeah, like a constant communication, which is important when trying to tell stories that you personally do not have experience in.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear how clearly hard that they worked on ensuring that it was believable. I've worked with an HOH person on a mine site before.
Oh.
And fuck, was that handy. Because you have earplugs in all day. I tried to apply for it in high school to take ASL instead of, like, French.
Yeah.
But that wasn't an option. I believed that ASL was a more applicable second language for me and the paths that I was planning to take in life than something like French would be.
Yeah.
But that was not something that schools allowed at the time, but I do think that they're actually starting to allow more options for second language courses, which I think is really important. And yeah, like, he was so freaking funny. Like, I know very little ASL, but yeah, from, like, across the mine where you wouldn't be able to hear somebody, we could, like, make jokes and stuff, and it was fun. It was really cool to be able to experience, like, a different form of communication in a way that is so, or that has the ability to be so, like, physical, and it's just a different way to communicate. And it was a really interesting experience. And yeah, now I'm more excited to watch the show because that sounds like it's something that would really pique my interest.
Yeah, it's really good. And on the note of you saying that more schools, and this is from our experience in Canada, can't speak of any other location,
yeah.
But I know it can be hard to get people to come in and teach it, mainly because they also have to sadly find someone who has an education degree to do it, which makes it complicated.
Yeah.
And, like, I get that, but at the same time, in my opinion, like, if someone can teach to you and offer you something that your community wants or needs, I feel like they should be able to work around and try to find a way to have that person be in schools to do that, even if it's like, oh, an after school thing that kids can come do if they sign up for it. Mm-hmm. Right?
And now I believe that it is, they have some schools, depending on where it is and stuff like that, could get funding for if you find a course online. Now, like, even just as short back a time as we were in high school, which is like barely 10 years ago, but now there's so many more options for learning. So if you find a course online and you can say, hey, I want to take this as a second language, they might be able to get you the funding and to be able to pay for that course to then be taught. So you don't necessarily need to have a person who's able to teach sign language in the school physically, but you can actually, it just opens up the door to so many more possibilities for people, which I think is it's really cool. Almost like an independent study.
Yeah.
For students.
I was a little sad because back in the summer, I saw an old classmate share. It was on Facebook. Rarely go on Facebook, so I'm sad that I saw it a little too late when I did go on. They were sharing this workshop for 100 people that could take an ASL 3-week workshop online, and it was like only $100.
Oh wow, that's not bad.
And I was like, ooh, like, I got nothing to do during COVID summer. Heck yes. But they were sold out of spots that were available. Mm-hmm. I hope there's more opportunities for more people to be able to learn other forms of communication that they think are important to them in their community.
Yes. There's a very funny video of a person who took an ASL course, and at the end you have to ASL along with a song.
Oh.
And they did it to Fuck You by CeeLo Green.
Really?
And it's the funniest shit, and everybody in the class is like cheering along, and it's a very funny little YouTube video. It's definitely worth a watch. So yeah, she's just signing along with Fuck You.
Oh, I like that.
It's very good. It's very funny.
I guess to continue talking about how her deafness was viewed and handled, for anyone that's new to the series and hearing about it now, or to those who I guess are familiar with the series, you will find or have found that many of Amaya's most intimate and raw moments are not translated.
Oh, that's nice.
And in the article, Alex was talking to Devin Guile, but he's one of the show's main writers. And I guess those raw and intimate moments where there was no translation for Amaya as she was signing was a conscious and deliberate choice. Mm-hmm. Because, to quote what was said, she's a deaf character, and the writers have expressed that they wanted it so that understanding what she's communicating here is for the deaf audience, not for anyone else. Mm-hmm. And, I personally really appreciate that, because like you said earlier, Alison, when there are movies or shows that deliberately don't provide subtitles when someone is speaking another language, it's kind of like, if you do speak that other language, or if you do know how to sign, it's awesome.
Yeah.
You are going to be able to understand other contexts, more information about this person and the world you live in.
Yeah.
But if you don't, well, if you want to know what they say, it's learn that language. Mm-hmm. Or if you care, take some time and try to figure out how to translate it, or just, I don't know. I just think I like knowing I'm not a target audience for something.
Yeah.
Because it makes me feel more connected, like it is a real world thing, because there's tons of people in the world I know I can't connect with because I'm not the target audience.
Yeah. What I get out of their comment on it being in her more intimate moments, in those moments, in reality, people are not thinking about ensuring other people can understand. In a way, it's about you expressing in the way that you would normally express those emotions in the truest form to yourself, which I think is hard for some people, especially people who aren't hard of hearing or who don't have any of those disabilities, to necessarily realize that the way that they communicate is different to you and seems foreign to you, but to them that is as simple as speaking for us.
Yeah.
It is not extra work. It is nothing like that. That is how they communicate. I wouldn't be trying to express myself in another language or in sign language or in any of those ways if I was upset. I would go to my automatic capability of communication. I wouldn't think about trying to change the way that I'm expressing myself, which of course she wouldn't either.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see the idea of shifting the target audience. We're seeing it more with shows that are shifting to actually targeting female audiences, less male gaze stuff, less sort of those things. And it's cool to see that it's also going towards other less represented communities, because I know I've mentioned it countless times, but representation in media is vastly important. And for those same reasons where you said that it's not necessarily going to tell your exact same experience, but that's why we need more of it.
Yeah.
Because the more stories you have told, the more likely it is for it to closer resemble somebody's real life experience and to be able to closer connect with it. And God, it's just so cool hearing about it.
I know, you should, Alison and any other listener that hasn't watched it, all 3 seasons are out. It's good. Take some time. Again, I feel like sometimes the animation for me, again, was just a little bit jarring because I wasn't used to it, but you get used to it pretty quickly. And if anyone loves Sokka from Avatar: The Last Airbender, The voice actor for Sokka is the voice actor for Callum. So, so like, that's really cool, that little nod. And there's a lot of badass fictional female characters, Alison. Like, I want to talk about Rayla. I would love to talk about Claudia, because she's so fucking complex. It's crazy. And there's a young queen who I think is like young teenage years, like she's quite young, from another human kingdom, and she's cool. There's just like a lot of really really cool characters in the show, and I'm kind of sad that the Dragon Prince is only 3 seasons. It makes sense why it's only 3 seasons, but I'm really excited knowing that they have plans to make more show type material or comic books set within Zadia.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because it's a really cool world.
Yeah. I do like shows that end, though. Like,
oh, same.
Yeah. It's sad, but I get it. And I prefer it to just end when it's, like, good.
Yeah. No, it's great. The series ends with a lot of questions, but that's fine. Not all material needs to provide me with solid answers.
No, you're a grown-ass person who can come to conclusions, and I think media has a hard time in realizing that their audience has a brain and can, like, survive. It's like, we don't necessarily need all the answers. We don't need you to fucking lay out the whole story for us and be like, explaining it to us like we're children. It's like, no, we can piece things together and figure it out.
Oh, 100%.
We are capable.
Something quick I just want to plug in that I think is really cool, and this came out recently, thank God. I was watching Critical Role, but Cortex, which is a company that makes a lot of different type of tabletop RPGs, they're teaming up with the people that do the Dragon Prince and with Netflix to come out with one called Tales of Exadia, which is going to be a Dragon Prince role-playing game.
Ooh, that's fun.
They have a website called talesofexadia.com, and I just want to quickly say some of the stuff that it says because it's really cool. It's about characters who experience love, war, family, heartbreak, and triumph in the world of groundbreaking animated series. Your stories are going to come to life around the game table with the award-winning Cortex platform. This is not sponsored. I'm just reading it.
This is not sponsored by Cortex.
I wish we were. And the possibilities are as limitless as your imagination. So the game is going to basically be like you and your friends forge alliances, you uncover secrets, you engage in mighty battles, blah, 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 and you protect those you love from peril and prophecy.
Ooh.
So it sounds so cool.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah, and basically, like, you can experience the Dragon Prince, but to me you're experiencing Tales of Exadia, like the world, where you get to explore the mysteries of like the different elves, the humans and dragons, and like the type of magic that's in it. And it sounds like really, 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 really cool. And I want to back it, but I think I might have to wait just because I have other things I want to back and purchase. Goddamn Kickstarters.
I know. They're so tempting. I have so many RPG Kickstarters. It's a problem.
Yeah. The reason I'm saying it is because if anyone is a fan of the show and really enjoyed the world, if you have other people, like, you could probably do one-shots for it, like a short little campaign if you wanted, but it sounds really cool. And another way, hopefully, that maybe they'll give us like little bits of information about the world that the show never gave us. Mm-hmm. So
neat.
Yeah.
So aside from the impressive way that they handled her deafness, were there any other like scenes or episodes or moments of her kind of beyond those that have to do with her disability that really stood out to you, that made her a character that you wanted to talk about?
Ooh, that's a good question. So one thing that's not really deep, but it is tied to like her humor, I guess. In the first season when she's venturing and she ends up finding Callum and Ezrin at like an old family home, she like goes in there and Gren is there, so he's interpreting a lot of the stuff, and at one point she says a joke because she finds like an old baguette basically. It doesn't look moldy, but it's there. It's really, really stale, and she like looks at it, holds it and whacks it like a sword against the table, and it doesn't break, it doesn't do anything. And she says that the food here is weapons grade. And I just really liked that because I was like, she's funny.
Yeah.
Right? Like she knows how to say a joke, and she was still trying to like show that she's not changed since time passed when I guess like Ezrin and Callum saw her.
Yeah.
Because she just goes up and immediately hugs them. And at one point they were talking and they're like, oh no, we haven't eaten yet or something like that. And she's like, what do you mean? Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Like that's how Gren translates it. And I'm like, she just cares so much. And she seems so heartwarming, even though she comes across as such an intimidating character.
Yeah.
But I think that was the first moment where I was like, oh, she seems really cool. Like, I can't wait to see how they have her show and interact more as the series goes. I guess the other scene I really liked was at one point it's called Book 3, which is Season 3. We get a flashback scene that Viren is telling people about how the previous Dragon King died.
Okay.
And that also happened to be, sadly, where the beloved queen, Amaya's sister, Sarai, also died.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it's, again, told from the perspective of Viren. So hard to say how
accurate it is.
How accurate some of it is. But, like, we see Amaya as a younger version of herself. Like, it was so cool to see her interactions with her sister and how that was portrayed. And then to see how, though it was really hard for, I think, and it wasn't completely shown, Amaya to, like, have to move on without Sarai in the heat of the battle as they were trying to run away and doing all this other stuff. She didn't necessarily have that huge tragedy impact her in a negative way. She's still sad because in other episodes we see her visiting her sister's grave, and there's a lot of like raw moments with her there and how she interacts with like even her nephews and like the world around her. When people knew Sarai, she doesn't seem to use that as any reason for her to be mean or hateful. Like, she definitely dislikes Zadia and the elves and the dragons when we first meet her, but who wouldn't if a dragon killed your sister?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and then she changes and she understands what happens, and she understood maybe the reasons they did things wasn't good, and that's why her sister sadly died, was because of them not knowing the full scope and making choices at the time that didn't have a lot of information and facts to back up their choices for wanting to kill the Dragon King and all that. And anyways, I really appreciated that her trauma and the sadness of her sister dying in battle, she doesn't use it as a justifiable means to treat people badly. You know, and she's still really kind. So I think those two scenes definitely made me want to talk about her because I was thinking about it. And at first, the first character I wanted to talk about was Rayla, because Rayla's really, really cool. But I realized that Amaya is more complex, and there's beauty in her complexity that I wanted to try to talk about. But yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
She's really cool. You should totally watch the show.
I'll add it to my extensive list.
Oh, I know. I have a freaking long list myself.
Yes.
It's hard to catch up. And sometimes I just give up. I don't care anymore.
Oh, yeah. And my list just keeps getting longer.
Yeah. Like, I think at one point I wanted to try and watch... Like, I still do kind of want to watch it. But also, if I don't, it's not a huge deal. Dairy Girls.
Oh, yeah, I've heard good things about it. But...
I know, but I'm just like, I have, like, other things that just keep popping up. Like, right now, my interest is mainly in tabletop. live RPGs and podcasts and whatnots, but whatever.
Yes.
It's fine. Anyways, Alison, that's why I love Amaya.
Yay.
So before we end off this show, Alison, can you tell me what you're excited about right now?
So right now, I'm going to plug 2 podcasts that I just binged at work because they're 2 little short ones. The first one is by the actress who played Tanis from my Letterkenny episode.
Ooh, okay.
It's called Coffee with My Ma, and it's where she just asks her mom about her life and what it was like growing up as an Indigenous person in such a tumultuous time in Canadian history, and especially out in the Ontario area of Canada. A lot of big historical events happened in regards to kind of the government and their relationship with the Indigenous peoples of the area. And she talks about some other crazy stuff. She led this incredible life, and getting to hear a young woman talk to her mother about her story and her life. And it just is such a reminder of just how much history our ancestors carry with them and how much stories they have. And it's such a cute show.
Oh, that sounds really nice.
So yeah, it's a really awesome Canadian company. They plug a bunch of other great Canadian brands. So it's a very good podcast.
Do they plug Tim Hortons?
They do not.
Not that it's a great Canadian brand, but
yeah,
it's a brand.
It sure is a brand. And then the other one is called History of the 90s.
Oh.
Which, as a 90s kid, I love because they touch on topics that I always knew of and was always in my kind of worldview. I always knew that they happened.
But you were too young.
But I was too young to really understand the context of it and the extent of which it happened and of what happened. And it's extremely well researched, and it does things everywhere from true crime to boy bands.
Oh, boy bands.
And so it's just it touches on everything and all of these cultural touchstones that truly I never really realized just how much the world changed in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was such a decade of innovation, and it just catapulted our society into the future almost because of technology and the 24-hour news cycle and all of these things that you don't realize came about in the decade when I was born, because I was 8 when it switched over to 2000. So it was there, but it wasn't, I didn't realize it, right?
Yeah.
So it's really fun and, like I said, well researched and just so interesting to listen to. Just all of these things.
Quick question. Were you an NSYNC fan or a Backstreet Boys fan?
I was an NSYNC fan.
I was a Backstreet Boys fan. Interesting.
That episode is actually extremely interesting because it gets on to the guy who put together the Backstreet Boys.
Oh, there's an episode specifically about the Backstreet Boys?
Yes.
Oh.
It actually might just be about boy bands. I can't 100% remember, but it focuses the most on the Backstreet Boys because they were the big one. There had been ones before.
Oh, but young Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, he was an NSYNC.
I know, but he was always the reason why I wanted to teeter away from Backstreet Boys, but I never did.
I just had to rewatch because in the episode they mention how one of their big breaks was the song, was kind of the video age, because we were of the age when music videos and MTV started to be a big thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And how their music video for Quit Playing Games With My Heart was very sexy. And I was I kind of remembered it, but I didn't 100% remember it. And so I was brushing my teeth one night. I was you know what? I'm just going to look up this music video. And And I looked it up, and at the beginning, there's, like, they're all in, like, basic street clothes. They're at, like, a skate park or some shit. And they're just singing, and it does all those classic 90s close-up shots of their face as they're singing and just being so emotional. And then, like, a minute and a half, like, quite a far way into the song, I'm just like, when does it get sexy? Like, and then, like, almost at the exact moment when I was checking that, it, like, switches over, and now there's, like, rain coming down, and they're all wet, and they're in these, like, white button-up shirts, and they're all open, and their abs are out, and then there's, like, close-up shots of their chest while they're, like, writhing, and I'm like, Jesus! Like, oh my goodness! What is this?
You're like, young me did not remember that.
I was like, young me was clearly affected by these things, but holy shit. But the podcast is extremely informative and touches on a lot of things that I didn't recognize, like, kind of culturally as well. Like, they talk about the Berlin Wall and Nelson Mandela being freed from prison, and then it talked about tech gadgets and, like, Game Boys and Tamagotchis.
Oh,
and so it's such a weird blend, but I love it so much because it's, like, history, it's learning, but it's also nostalgia, and it's fun, but then there's true crime, and it's just everything.
Aww.
So there's a couple podcast recs from Alison. Hopefully you enjoy them. You can find us wherever podcasts can be found. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram at wenchbenchpod, and if you want to reach out, you can send us an email at wenchbenchpod@gmail.com. All the art for the Wench Bench was designed by the wonderful Tessa Joyce Riecken. You can find her on Twitter and Instagram at Werevile. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody. I have that in my head.
Rock your body. Rock your body now.
Now just check, did that sound like deafness or deafness? Did I say it?
I heard deafness. So.
Thank God. Okay, you can cut the rest of this out, but I'm always paranoid.
Down, 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 down.